experience, um, I had the sense what I literally felt like was that the MDMA had sort of opened a channel to Christ to come into me and to show me that I could be loved enough to walk through my own personal hell.
Yes. I mean, on I think it was the estuary talk you gave, and you said that somebody came in during one of those sessions, was like, it smells like an exorcism in here.
Yeah.
But when you say when Jesus came into me in that space and you're shaking on the ground for 4 hours, it's like, does that not sound like a New Testament story? Like, does that, I mean, and when we try to make this like, well, it's just biological things ticking off in my brain, but like, to me, it just sounds like it doesn't take much for Christ to be able to access that if he wants to by command.
Well,
You
it's
know,
it's interesting to me, right? I think I'm on the wilds of this sort of liminal space of Christianity here, but I think of Jonathan Pajot and someone like that would be very, very concerned about this. And I think there's a good reason. Like I do actually think that you could be colonized by bad powers and principalities. I think that these tools are really valuable and powerful, but they are dangerous. It's not that they're safe, right? I've seen the dangers of them. I think that you're set in your intention. I prayed to Christ before I did this. I had really strong intentions. I prayed during it. Um, and I think that protected me from things. But so the second time that I did it, uh, I basically was visited by a demon that night.
yeah,
Right. So first of all, is it purely biological? So based on the half-life of MDMA, I should have basically not had MDMA in my system to any significant degree by like the end of that day. But I had 4 hours of tremors, then I had 2 hours of soberness, and then I had another hour and a half of tremors. And then I had like probably another hour and a half later, I had 20 more minutes, and then another hour and a half later, I had 20 more minutes. And I woke up the next day and did an hour and a half more tremoring. And then I would tremor lightly while processing emotion for weeks afterwards, maybe months.
yeah.
And what it felt like it was more like the chemical sort of opened a capacity within me. And my nervous system was like, oh, I can use that. I can do that. I know now how to do this thing. But yeah, so then the second time I took it, I was in a hotel room after it. I was resting to just like rest up. And the basically like I kind of like I woke up in the middle of the night and I went into to the kind of state that I would do my internal family systems therapy in. And I was sort of like, is Nakub, this character, is he there in me? And I had this, I started feeling as if my skin was burning. And this thing popped up in me, which I don't actually think was that character. I think it was something that was masking itself as that character. But it started saying like, look, like you thought you got rid of me, but actually you just gave me the levers to do way more stuff to you.
Mm.
And so I was laying in bed and like this laughing demonic presence was running around in me for a while. And I felt like I was on fire. And then, and I just kept faith. I just believed that Christ was protecting me in that moment, and that this thing actually didn't have the power it was claiming over me.
Yeah.
And then it went away. And the next day I was fine. And,
So that doesn't, I think I heard you say it, like even at that conference, that there was something like, my left and right brain, like for me to say I'm a Christian now, like it is hard to square that with a materialistic worldview, like those experiences. I mean, it's just like, but are there things
it's not that hard to square it in some sense, right? Like you could just say, we can hand wave it away. We can say, right, it's a construction of my psyche. My psyche's been influenced by a Christian culture, which has a certain image of demons. I've watched this or that movie. I've seen blah, blah, blah. I don't think it's that hard to try to explain it in a materialistic fashion. But the sense having been through it is that the materialistic explanation doesn't feel like an explanation. It feels like an explaining away. And leaning into the materialistic explanation doesn't feel like it empowers me to engage in the character transformation that I want. So it's a weird thing, because like I suppose that my left brain would say that to sort of solidify our capacity to engage in like highly rigorous epistemology, we should treat these things very skeptically. But then there's this pragmatic side on the other side that says that part doesn't actually see the whole thing, and the whole thing that and the evidence that matters to you is when you treat it like this, you love your wife and your children better.
Yeah, and I think that's where you kind of you mentioned something about like why somebody like Jonathan Pageau might have a critique of something, but like for the person that would want to seek those experiences for the sake of the experience versus allowing the experience to change you in the way that it's maybe designed to, or was it's purposed to, or can be purposed to. I've had similar experiences, not with not drug induced, but by, I would say, something like stress induced. I mean, also related to doing therapy, had things that were able to come up into my consciousness that I understood like through those processes. And something like trying to withhold the truth on such a deep level, like, you know, I had like sores break out on my hands related to that, you know, and you know, was wasting away physically, and even whenever I would say a simple prayer like, God, what should I do? Whenever my wife and I were broken up and separated, I would literally put my hand over my mouth because the confession would try to come out of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like, no, I can't do that. It's too much. It's too much.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would have to put my hand over my mouth, and then I would, and then it wasn't until, I mean, I was really just confronted with, this is either it's coming down to basically a choice between heaven and hell, you know, for like the rest of your life. And I think, you know, like that fear of whenever you talked about like facing the consequences for your family, for your inheritance, which is where I would go back to like this Isaac idea, like the inheritance of Abraham, like facing, this is what is at stake. But we actually, to save it somehow, some way, we have to actually be willing to let it go out of our control with the truth, you know. And that to me is when you allow that, you allow the dagger to come down. Whether or not it comes all the way down is to be known, but something happens in that act of faith. If you take the faith to trust, something happens that, as I think you said it at the end of that talk at Northwest Estuary, which was and I have it here, the relationship between faith and works, and also the work of embedding meaning deep into your mind, body, and soul through years of practice. Oh wait, here it is. He says, I felt tingling in the back of my hands as I felt the ghost of the nails. Somehow through these experiences, I feel like I discovered that love is the highest principle, and that if you put your faith in God that loves you, you can work a miracle.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, yeah, I think it's a miracle. I think what you talk about is a miracle. I think what I experienced was something like a miracle.
Absolutely. I mean,
Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud.